Today we have Brett Ullman with us, and Brett, if you don't know him, you need to get to know him. You need to get involved, follow him on social media, and get involved in the different things he's doing. He's constantly traveling around doing very important and needed training in different areas. I'll let Brett give a bit more of a introduction to him of himself. But Brett, it's great to have you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can share yours. And we look forward to what God has for us through you today, Brett.
Awesome. Thank you. It's funny, the old Zoom, if I put something in before we started, it didn't show. So I'm hoping you all see I listed everything. Joey, do you see all the stuff I dropped in earlier?
Yeah.
Okay. And I just put two, I'd love to know what churches people are at. For those of you who are here, if you're not live, you can drop it in, but we won't be able to see wherever you're watching it after. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Brett Ullman. I live in Ajax, so 45 minutes east of Toronto. I'm going to chat as I start sharing my screen. My background is education. I taught for 10 years in the Toronto District School Board, and I left that 17 years ago to do this, and this is my full-time job. There's a bit of a transition coming out of COVID. My speaking dates have gone down about 30%, so I'm still doing about 70 or 80 a year, which is a lot. It's just not enough for a small nonprofit. So I begun my master's in counseling, and I am currently actually in practicum, so I see 10 clients a week, and I'll be doing both of those kind of ongoing as I move forward. I speak on issues that I think we either don't know how to, don't want to, or don't like speaking on. And so mental health is my largest, and I really think we need to reevaluate the relationship we have with people in our youth groups and our churches with mental health, and I have an entire talk on that. Parenting is one of my biggest conversations. I have a talk called Parenting Navigating Everything, and I have a book to go along with that. Media, which is today, I speak on pornography. I have an older talk on sex, which is not like gender and LGBTQ+. It's more just like we need to begin the conversations on the discussions of sex. And I speak on dating and men as well. So I got a short period of time today, so I am just going to kind of get into this conversation. I've been speaking for 26 years. I was speaking while I was teaching, but if you know me, I've spoken on media. I had a talk called Media, Faith, Culture, and I've been speaking that for many years. And recently, I just came to the realization that things are shifting and things are changing. So this is my new talk, and it's actually a talk, it's in creation. I'm still not completely finished it. I take about 2 years to research a talk. So today, I just want to equip and empower you to be better in this conversation, no matter who you're working with, parents and students. And I think it's really important we spend a chunk of our time equipping parents who spend so much more time with their kids than we often get. I am married with 2 kids. My wife's name is Dawn. She's a nurse. My daughter Zoe's in her 3rd year of philosophy at McMaster. She did 2 years at Western and transferred. She wants to be a lawyer. And my son Ben is the other direction. He's at Queen's in Kingston doing psychology. He wants to be a counselor and then a psychologist. So on the conversation of technology, let's just here's just some thoughts. Number one, we're not going back. I hear people say we got to go back to the good old days. And I'm like, it wasn't that good. There's always this idea that everything was so much better in other days, but we need to begin to have conversations around this stuff maybe differently. No head in the sand, no hatred or fear of technology. And we can do this. The truth is, though, I don't know sometimes if we're doing a good job at this conversation. And I expect more of me, I expect more of you as leaders, and I expect more of our kids in this as well. So here's a quick outline. And yeah, I'm going to do this in 30 minutes. Some of it will just be a quick glean over, but the goal that I have is that I'll be filming this into probably a 10-part video series that you could use for almost a season. I'm hoping to film it this summer, but we'll see. So as faith-based people, just a couple of quick thoughts. How we engage with technology affects everything. It affects our body, our mind, our soul, and our Christian witness. And I do believe that our worldviews shape our values, which shape our actions. And if we have biblical Christian worldviews, that should flow through everything. So I began to want to create a new conversation, and I'm fortunate in that I have time. And so I began to read, and I began to be overwhelmed. I think I'm at 75 books. So I was reading 2 or 3 books a week. And I would just encourage you to be readers. But the 6 on the left that I've starred, now every book that I challenge you to read today, if you go to the chat, I have book suggestions for you, and I think we're all Canadian, but if you click on the Amazon shop, you'll find them categorized. So these would be under media. Digital for Good, one of my favorites, and iGen, if you haven't read, probably one of the quintessential books kind of on statistics of how technology is affecting our kids. Then I read studies, and I'm talking actual studies, not like I Googled something on YouTube and this is what popped up. YouTube videos, TED Talks, talked to a few thousand people, and I sat back and went, I have no idea how to have a conversation. Like my conversation on mental health, I really love body, mind, and soul. I love a pragmatic structural view, and this is a scattered conversation. There's so much to it. So let's begin where we're all in alignment, and I hope we would all agree with this. Not all tech is bad, not all tech is good, but tech is powerful and can affect us in many ways. And I only see a couple of faces, but I assume this is a good place that we would all agree with. I don't think anyone would disagree with this conversation. And tech is awesome. I'm what I'd call an early adopter. I love tech. Like I'm wearing an Oura ring. I love wearables. This is actually my mental health struggles. I struggle with sleep, so this checks my deep sleep every night. I'm currently wearing an an Apollo Nero, which is tapping me all day. I'm kind of in fight or flight, but I love tech. So, but from a media standpoint, like I love that Apple Music, I can ask Alexa to turn on any song ever. Podcasts are what many of us just enjoy. Social media, I really like. It's how my prayer team prays. I can equip people on a daily basis with content. Maps, when I travel, I put on Waze and it tells me where to go and not go. Communication, I love being able to text my kids and my wife. Calendars, great.
So I was going.
Someone isn't muted. If someone can mute whoever that is, that'd be great. And exercise, I love all the different things. Now, here's one thing we see today is that many parents are not equipping their kids in these conversations. And often we actually find that children are reprimanded and punished for not knowing lessons that parents have yet to teach. Now, it's an interesting challenge that we need to, and I talk about this in my parenting talk, we need to begin to equip our kids, right? They're only going to be with us for a certain season of time, and how do we equip and prepare them for life? I do believe, and I'm quoting Julie Lythcott-Hames, that we stopped preparing kids and we started protecting kids from life. And those are very different conversations. But one reason maybe parents aren't doing this is the world that we grew up in, and I'm 51, is different. Music was a record. Anybody remember records? And then we rebought everything as cassettes. Then we rebought everything as CDs. Podcasts and social media didn't exist. Maps were literally pieces of paper. Anybody remember triptychs from CAA, where you get a booklet this big to drive to the US? Communication, we had it, but it was a phone tethered to a wall, and then you bought like $100 cord or 100-foot cord at Radio Shack to stretch it into your room. Calendars were physical. FaceTime didn't exist. And if you wanted to exercise, you would strap a Sony Walkman or something to your hip. Anybody remember those? Cassettes would fall out into the water, be ruined forever. There was no streaming. You bought a record. You paid $12 for it. You liked one song on the entire album. And TV, you had to watch TV when it was on. If it's 9 o'clock on a Thursday, you watched it at 9 o'clock on a Thursday. But the arrival of the smartphone changed everything, not for teenagers, for everyone. For everyone. John Acuff recently said, if your teenager has a hard time managing their phone, remember, there wasn't a single time during your entire childhood where your parents gave you a fragile, pocket-sized distraction casino worth $500 to $1,000 and said, here, good luck. And I kind of agree that's where we're sitting today. So let me give you some statistics, and I would say all statistics are wrong. They're just a snapshot of a time and a place. Just a few. So 87% of teens own an iPhone, which is why when a parent buys a Huawei or an Android of some sort phone, kids will be upset. AirPods is actually decreasing as we're back to like big, huge headsets are now popular. We spend around 7 to 10 hours a day on screens, and I'm being very conservative here. I'm not a fear-based speaker or person. This is kind of conservative. Now, here's the truth. Not all screen time is equal. It's not. I'm working on my master's degree. I have to go counsel today. I'll have another hour on a screen. And tonight I'm working on a paper. I'll be on screens, but it's not all the same. And 2+ hours of this are on social media. This one scares me. 60% of kids younger than 8 own a smartphone. And this is against every recommendation from everyone. But 40% owning a tablet, I actually don't care. This is kind of how technology works. Our kids usually get our older technology when they're really young. And then my kids bought their first iPad in grade 4. They had their own paper route, and we begin to use technology. And research, this is actually real research. Again, I think we say online a lot, like, well, I researched it. And you meant you Googled it or searched it on YouTube. If you look at the studies below these, so when it says Elhai et al. 2017, this is actually meaning Elhai, a person, and others. Et al. Is Latin for and others. Did a study, and this is all peer-reviewed research, which means someone did a study at U of Ottawa, someone did, and then did the same study at McMaster, and they found the answers are the same. Peer-reviewed research, meaning it's just true. Smartphone use has been shown to negatively impact well-being, physical health, and academic performance across the board. Increased daytime sleepiness and decreased sleep quality. And social media use has been shown to decrease well-being and life satisfaction and increase depression and anxiety. Now, depression and anxiety is a larger conversation. It is not just something that we can say social, like this is the problem. If someone just says it's the phones and that's it, just click delete. It is a multifaceted conversation, from concussions to predisposition to burnout to breakdown to postpartum to many, many things. Now, Kelly says there's no shame in admitting that you were previously speaking from a less informed place. I think we need to come to a place where we're really, I always say in church, like putting your hands up in worship is easy. Doing this is really hard. Our structures, our thoughts, our technologies, whatever else it might be. Maya Angelou says it best, do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better. I think we've come to a place where something shifted. It was just pre-COVID. Anyone ever open their phone for no reason and look around a little bit and then close it? You've been on your phone for what, 10 seconds? And when I asked it to an audience, people all kind of laugh a little bit. And it's like, there's a problem with that. Like we are searching for a quick dopamine hit or something like that. And I don't know what you see, but what I see concerns me. I see parents with kids in strollers with YouTube playing in the little cup holder while they go for a walk outside. What do you think are the ramifications from that 15 years down the road? Parents ignoring kids at the park. Here's my challenge to you. For the next few weeks, even few months, I want you to be very cognizant as you walk around, just looking at people. When you go for a walk, and it will get nice weather no matter where you're coming soon, but just look around and you see people on their phones pushing a kid in a swing as the kid speaks to no one. And then we'll question and wonder why later in life that there are kids who are struggling with, different social issues. Parents or people who unlock their phones every 7 minutes, who touch their phones 3,000 times a day, ignoring our friends while we're on our phones. The new word for this is called phubbing, phone snubbing. Zero downtime, people who are woken at night by notifications, a growth in anxiety and depression, lack of in-person relationships, students being sextorted, we'll come back to this, poor sleep, poor nutrition. Adolescence today is now becoming an extension of childhood rather than the beginning of adulthood. And if you work with youth and you've done so for a while, you've seen a very interesting change, meaning the kids that some of us, like Joey and myself, who've been in this for a lifetime, the kids we would have seen 20 years ago are very different than the kids we see now. Driver's licenses are a huge one. Back in my day, everyone got their license the day they turned 16. And most of us got our 365 and our license. If you're younger, it's like getting your G1 and your G2 in the same day because we could. Recent statistics 2 weeks ago, 42% of students are getting their licenses when they kind of in high school years, 42%. And it's always because of the parents' fear for the most part. We now have the most fearful generation of students that I've ever seen in my lifetime, but it's our fears as parents which are being now emulated by our kids. Kids say, well, I live in a big city and, we drive a van. And I'm like, which of your parents said that word? Because that's not how kids used to be. Part-time jobs are going down. Parents are scared of their kids working at McDonald's. Religious affiliation going down. Dating. I'm invited to a church in Toronto a number of years ago. 100 young adults. Was it 1 or 200? It would have been 200 young adults. No one's dating. And I kind of laughed and said, no one's dating. He goes, Brett, no one's dating. So I said, before we talk about dating, is anyone dating? Like, no one. And I'm like, why? Can someone give me one answer? Just silence for this minute. And then a kid put up his hand. And he said, well, my mom said whoever I go for a coffee with, I have to marry. That's why you're not dating. Like, that's, again, parents' fears onto kids' fears. Face-to-face interaction is going down, going out with parents. If you read iGen, again, that's on my book list, which you can see. But Jean talks about a grade 12 girl who can only be away from her mom for 30 minutes at a time. The more we overfunction as adults, the more our kids underfunction. And we have created this new paranoid parenting style. Like, this is in my parenting talk. Of course, I want Christian parenting. I want my kids to love Jesus, but we need to be equipping and empowering our kids to go into life. Because, I mean, I have 2 kids at university. They have to deal with everything on their own. And if I've been doing it up until their June of their grade 12 year, they just don't go and do well at school. Poor sleep, nutrition, exercise, and safety. And these are things that are up. You can read all of those there. Purposelessness is an interesting one. I just added this in. We're at an interesting crossroads I'm seeing in society where there's becoming a growing issue with men. Statistically, men, like every negative thing, men will have more. Men are failing out of school at higher rates, dropping out of college, university at higher rates. Books like Boys Adrift, Boy Crisis. The new thing I see after speaking is parents who say to me this: I have a 17 through 28-year-old. They live in my basement. They smoke weed every day. They play video games and they work at Wendy's 4 hours a week. And you hear it a few times and you're like, this is an anomaly. And now I'm hearing it hundreds and hundreds of times as I travel. And I'm like, I don't know what we do with this, but somehow in this progression of life, young men are being missed. And I don't know where we as parents need to get involved, where you as youth workers, how do we all work together with this? But I just say with all tech, is what you're currently doing helping support the life you're working towards? I was in Calgary in December on tour, and I was asking, I had grades 6, 7s, and 8s in a lot of them. And I was just saying, like, we need to get away from this. You trying to have as much tech as possible and parents saying, get off tech. Like, there should never be a time when a parent says, you've been on Fortnite for 7 hours. You as a student should be saying, is this helping me in life? When we know today that the average young man who begins college, university can barely hold a conversation, say new studies, due to lack of just social interaction in life. And having a headset is not looking at someone and seeing nodding and smiling and body language and other things. So looking at, this is a great study. It says everything positive is correlated with offline activities, sports and exercise, in-person social interactions, religious services, print media. Homework is an interesting one. And I would say homework is here because there's something about finishing an essay. Like when I finish this 15-page paper tonight, there's something about knowing you've completed. There's progress, there's something. But everything negative is everything digitally and online. And I would just say when we look at conversations with parents, there must be a progression. And it's the same with media. I'm having, my wife and I are building like media contracts, which are great when kids are young, but every year things should be flying off those contracts until your kids begin living and making decisions on their own of how they want to act and be, because pretty soon, like none of you as adults usually have media contracts. So how do we release kids to make good decisions for themselves and take ownership for their own technology? Self-Driven Child, which every parent should read, says without a healthy sense of control, kids feel powerless and overwhelmed and become passive and resigned. And then it talks about being anxious, having greater anger, self-destructiveness, and self-medicating. And this is where sometimes in the church we have overbearing, over-functioning parents, as opposed to how do we work together as families for success in all these things? And I'm big on family meetings, family meals, even the way we phrase things like with our kids, we're for you, we're not against you. How do we work together with you in these conversations? So social media, TikTok, whether you, and I'm not getting into political stuff with China right now. It's funny, it's unique, it's informative, it's tailored for you like nothing else. But there's also a whole slew of negative things that come in as well. Now, instead of barring our students, says Tim, from engaging in social platforms, what if we were to instead build into them the skills they need to make these decisions themselves? This is equipping and empowering kids for life, as opposed to protecting them and sheltering them from life. Now, impulse control is a big one. Like, how many people just do this all day long, even as adults? It's interesting, as youth workers, and like, I speak a lot to adults these days, but I also do speak to students. But like, it's often like, good adults, bad students. And I would say with tech, we're probably worse. When I look at how adults act, kids say to me, my parents say, get off my phone, but they're watching TV and on their phones all night the moment that they are home. And they've offered me nothing else other than technology. We put up a flat screen. We have a PS4, PS5 if you're lucky, Xbox, and that's all we offer them. Say, get off screens, but we've never gone for a walk. We don't own a game of Settlers or other things. We don't like, we've only offered tech, but we're mad at kids when all they play is tech. And influence versus authority is something our kids need to understand, and same with us. Just because you can post on anything, on TikTok, on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and someone has 1 million followers, it doesn't mean you have the right or the authority to actually do it. Like, we need to be able to look at things and go, that's not true. Everything is not true that's online. And again, I'm not talking about like fake news and everything's political. I'm just saying, just because someone posts something doesn't mean that they actually have the answer. One of our biggest issues today is our students, especially young women, but also men, diagnosing themselves with mental illnesses due to TikTok. You cannot diagnose yourself with bipolar. Someone says, oh, I'm happy sometimes, I'm sad sometimes. I guess I have bipolar. They begin living out an identity that's actually not correct, meaning only a doctor, a psychologist, and psychiatrist can actually do those assessments to diagnose you. And almost every adult I talk to, it's like, oh, I self-diagnosed me with ADHD. I'm like, you might have it, but it's not like every adult in the world suddenly has it. And we all have components of that. 70% of adults say they can spot misinformation, only 20% can. 75% of students say they can spot misinformation, and only 10% can. This is actually quite scary, because this goes through everything. Even if you're following faith-based things online, just because someone says something doesn't make it true. Do students and do you understand the ideas of sensationalism by an author and bias? What is the date? What's the URL? Is it verified facts or unverified or misleading facts? Actual articles have sources. Actual studies show the studies. And real harm can be done when in particular, again, I'm saying every ideological group, not one side, tosses around conspiracy theories in their corner of the social internet. And I love this because anyone can promote wild theories without recourse. I'm speaking in Montreal last spring, I think it was. And if you were online, many people, including some pastors I know, predicted the end of like all the society was going to collapse and the banking would collapse. Like, this is what people are posting online. But there's no recourse for people when they put fear out and it doesn't happen. And our personalized worlds prevent us from seeing opposing points of view. We really live in an echo chamber today. I work really hard so that my social media feeds are not just people who are like, way to go, Brett, like everything you believe is true. I want to be challenged. I follow people I disagree with on purpose so that I can kind of go, is my philosophies correct? Are my ideologies correct or not? Have you ever heard the term confirmation bias? This is that we favor information as people that confirms our previously existing beliefs and biases. And I really like this image. This was on Instagram. Many of us believe the world is this. It's like us and them. You know, every day is political. It's Democrats and Republicans. In Canada, it's conservatives and it's NDP and liberals. But the actual division is more like the egg on the bottom. And I'm like, that's a really interesting thought. And as a side note, you're commanded to be in front of people, right? Not just you only live in front of Christians or people with your political ideologies. We're meant to go live our life in front of the world. I'm a big fan of thought leaders, Simon Sinek. And I mean, I think you should be following and filling your social media feeds with all these people. Mark Sayers would be a thought leader in the church. So how do we remain non-anxious in this system? And we really have to take some, like, if you get anxious after being on Instagram, then you need to decrease your Instagram a bit. or maybe get rid of it. But everyone's a bit different. But we need to model good digital citizenship, and we need to teach our kids about digital citizenship. And one thing from the coddling of the American mind, I disagree with part of this book if you've read it, but I love the conversation on how words have become violence on college and university campuses, as opposed to bringing in people with differing points of view and having good discussion. But for our students and us, the more friends and rich friendships you have, the less the negative impact of social media will be. We did find this precipitous drop from 2012, and this was by increase in counseling bookings. And we don't really know why, but like social media became normal, increased academic pressures, the shifts in how we parent happen. Now we're protecting kids and not, like showing them how to live life. And it's just interesting the way things have changed. We now find it hard to watch full-length movies because we're used to 8-second TikToks. And how many books have you read this year? Almost 60% of Americans, and we're the same, say books are boring because we're used to short, quick clips. And I would say you better be a reader. Like if you read 5 pages a day, you'll read 3 books a year. And one of the best studies I've read talks about digital abstinence, not sex, no tech versus moderation. You know what wins? Moderation. If you decrease your tech by 1 hour a day, less depression and anxiety symptoms, life satisfaction's happier, more healthy lifestyle. And I just love it. I'm not going to go through all these. If you click on the side, and I have the where is it? Media Navigating Everything Take Home, you will find these social media tips. Plus, you'll find many other ones that I'm not doing in this talk. But if you haven't read Atomic Habits, I would. It's about the idea of incremental growth. This is how we begin with this. How could you be a little bit better? How do we equip our kids to be a little bit better? And some kind of hacks would be getting rid of your social media during the week and only using it on weekends. And I really kind of like that. Loneliness is now becoming one of our major things. We're at 52% of kids are lonely and growing, and social, like smartphone interactions will never lead to the same kind of intimate moments as being with other people. And Simon Sinek says that students today don't have coping mechanisms in their lives. I would say the same to adults. We don't turn to a person, we turn to tech. Like when we're not feeling well, instead we head on to Crave or we watch the new Mandalorian. I'm not saying they're bad, but I'm saying if we're having an issue, turn to people, walk through those issues. The truest form of wealth is social. It's not material. And so the quick challenge with that is just, can you add more face-to-face contact? Now, Joey, how long can I go to? 12:40?
Yeah, 12:40, 43, 44 in there somewhere.
This is the last kind of main section. I'll glean over a bit. We'll do some resources, then we'll do Q&A. Sexting is a conversation we need to have more and more. And this is the study that rocked my world recently. This isn't grade. This is grouped ages. So 9 to 10-year-olds, 3% were sending, and this self-generated child sexual abuse material is just sexting. Someone sending a topless, bottomless, naked photo. 3% in 2019, 15% in 2020. Just sit with that for a second. So I'm assuming most of you are youth pastors, youth ministers, youth directors. This is 9 and 10-year-olds. This is children's pastors conversation. 11 to 12 is up to 13 to 14-year-olds, 13%, that's junior high and high school, 1/4. And I'm assuming you've seen the destruction of these conversations. This is a prevention, but to have a prevention conversation, you need to have it. And I would put forth, we have an utterly destructive paradigm of the conversation of sex in the church world. We don't talk about it much when kids are young. We do a little bit when we're in junior high. We addressed it in high school, but of all we have to address, like you could talk about sex every day for most of the year, but there's so many things to cover. Parents, though, don't want that, and many parents pull their kids out for those days, whether at church or school. You're a young adult, the time you'll most likely mess up sexually. Our young adults are a little nomadic. They travel, they're around a lot, school, maybe they're not there. Then you get married at the time when we would say from a Christian paradigm, now you're free to be sexually active. And what do? We never talk about it again the rest of your life. Like, this is where we need to, what's the book? Sacred Cows Make the Best Burgers. We need to blow up some of the structures that maybe aren't working. And we're now seeing suicides. And like, look at the date on the one on the right, February 27th. Like, this is where kids are sending photos. It's now being sextortion. This isn't another person. It's actually organized crime most of the time, and they're being blackmailed, which reads in the term sextortion. Girls into more videos or pics, and guys into money. And some of these people are taking their life overnight, and parents have no idea. So the cornerstone of this is that kids know that they can go to their parents when they have any issue. This is why attachment parenting is the most important construct we need our parents to get. This idea that I love my kids no matter what, and they can come to me no matter what. And check out Cyber Tip a bit later, some really good information on what to do. This is for your kids or for you all. And these are all listed on my take home. And there's a really great thing on parents.thorn.org you can check as well. I do say to students, if you can't show maturity in the little things, how can we believe you will show maturity in the big things? And this is why things like making your lunch or getting ready for school or not being woken up by mom and dad in grade 11 are big. We do need to talk about this progression. If they're not going to progress, maybe phones and things aren't great for them, which is why when I should get a phone is such a huge question. There's so many questions that need to be asked. Because it's not, should I get a phone? This is not a phone, by the way. I believe it will be changed names in the next 5 years. It's an everything in the world device. But this is what students should be saying. When should I get a phone? How will I protect myself from pornography, predators, online bullying, and other things? Conversations on video games, conversations on music, on TV and streaming. I am tired in life of this being the only conversation I have with people. What are you watching on Netflix? I do couples counseling as well. What's the bottom level of any relationship? Watching television. Like, we need to find ways to engage better. We need, as families, to eat dinners together. I should not be told on an ongoing basis, eating dinners together was a revolutionary thing you said in your talk. And I'm like, really? That was what was revolutionary in my talk, that you should eat and talk to your family. And cyberbullying, we need to address. And mental health, very quickly, I just asked the question of, are you okay? Because statistics today are showing we are not. This is Jean's earlier research. This was women who went up with depression, and men will now in the newer studies be as well. Like, this is the idea of, if you didn't follow the Facebook papers where they kind of said people on Instagram, especially young women, it lowers our mental health. It lowers self-esteem. And sleep is the cornerstone of life. So can I encourage us to protect and guard our sleep? It's affected often by tech. So conclusion, you should be concerned with your trajectory. And this is one of the books. I actually paid my kids to read that. We can talk about that in Q&A if you want. But this is how in my house we've always done tech time. It's no 2 hours on the week and 3 hours on weekends. So if you look at the two jars, if you put the big rocks in first, then the small rocks, and then the sand, everything fits. If you do it the other way, it does not. This to me is a kind of paradigm for life. If we're putting faith practices, family time, you can see the rest. If we're doing that, everything fits. And I think this is a better way to view things, because if this is winter, I'm going to watch a Buffalo Bills football game. You know, soon I'll be watching playoffs in hockey, and I won't say what team because I know we're from different cities, but like, we all kind of enjoy these things. But before you watch a 3-hour game of hockey, you better do all the things that we need to do. And again, I have these tips and these challenges. And the first thing people always say to me is, well, it's my alarm. Then I'm like, well, so go buy a $5 alarm on Walmart. Like, there is answers to these things. And I think this is important. Language. You don't have to turn off your phone at night. You want to, right? It's like, I don't have to go to the gym. I get to go to the gym. I don't have to do devotions. I get to do devotions. And I would encourage all of you to go to humantech.com/youth. You can see these modules they've made. So good, like just really good, looking at the attention economy, persuasive tech, again, all in the take-home thing I sent you, plus a lot more. If you haven't been to my website, it's just my name, brettallman.com. I have around 1,400 links. I'm a collector of information for leaders, parents, pastors, students, all categorized by blog. And if you go to my blog and find the take home, if you just search take home, this will pop up. And you can see I've been doing Control the Controllables series, which is kind of mental health before we're struggling or saying we're going to go on mental health medications. Maybe see how much caffeine you're doing or consuming, or how much social media or other things. If your church is Right Now Media, my Parenting Navigating Everything course is online, and my talk on men, and this one should be by next summer. If you don't, I do have a course page. I think I listed it as well. Now, please be readers, and this is my link to every category that I speak on, and I've recently added marriage, and I've recently added counseling resources as well. And I've written 5 books. My older Media, Faith, Culture, and Parents 101 I pulled off the shelves. It had a clicky keyboard on it. I think we need to sometimes just say that, might be old. This is my first book on mental health, which is good information, but not answers. This is my breakdown put in book form, which is a free ebook, or a buck on Amazon, but free on my website. It's my journey, my breakdown put in book form. Some of you know Carey Nieuwhof. Carey wrote his journey for this, and some others did as well. All my other things you can find on YouTube. My Dating for Life is great for your students for a dating night. And my talk on porn is also, it's not graphic. And through COVID, I released a 3-year journey to create one handbook. I wanted one resource for parents. Here's what I've heard from people over and over again. My parents will buy maybe one book in the entire time they have a teenager. And like, well, which do you suggest? And so the first 6 chapters I put on parenting itself, one on family discipleship. And from mental health to the end, we can read this as leaders, our parents can, or students. It's written in a way that can be for anyone. And it's such a massive book. My wife helped me make a study guide, which is the same size as the book, which I think is the most brilliant thing ever. And if you're an audiobook person, I just released it on Audible. It's 23 3/4 hours long. So it might take you a couple of days to go through it. I actually filmed it in this room last summer with a sheet, multiple blankets all over me. Every time I would start, my neighbors would start cutting their lawn, and I'm like, go back in your house for half an hour. Is what you're currently doing helping support the life you're working towards? I think this is a really big conversation, but I think that we can have success in these things. I mean, it means just addressing it and talking about it. And I think kids love these conversations, but I would say more and more, I think one of the most important things is to equip our parents on how they can do this, because I find parents are just stuck, and often they just say, I'm paralyzed. There's so much I don't know what to do. We'll do a bit of Q&A if there's any. I do travel and speak. I'd love to come out to your church. I do have a tour dates section on my website, which is not current. I am a little bit busy right now counseling, and I do parenting counseling virtually. I'm also in Bowmanville and Pickering in person, but I have a lot of times I'm actually counseling students from across the country as well. Okay, I speak like a rocket. I do know that. I wanted to put a lot into this talk today, but I do post on my social media almost every day really rich content for you or your parents. And so it's something that you can push out to them. And most of my content's not mine. It's here's a great book, here's a good book on mental health, or whatever else.
Awesome. Brett, thank you. I always feel like I've been, a machine gun is a good way of looking at it. So much great information. So glad that your content we were recording, and it'll pop up through our website on our YouTube channel in the next 24 hours or so.